Social justice activism and the media need each other, but the interests of democracy and equality, they both need to work on their marriage. That's the fairly blunt opening to an editorial in the Maverick Citizen, part of the Daily Maverick, from its editor Mark Heywood, the well-known activist who joins me now on Wednesday lunchtime. Mark, good afternoon to you. You go on to say that civil society has had a mostly passive relationship with the media. What are you concerned about?
Good afternoon, Jeremy, and thank you for having me. Well, I think the starting point to the article is the fact that we are seeing hundreds of jobs being lost in the media, particularly in the print media, partly to do with the crisis caused by COVID-19, but partly to do with a more generalized crisis facing the funding of the media. So I wanted to write this editorial to draw attention to the political and constitutional importance of news and of those who record and broadcast and tell stories, and to say that we need to look at the relationship between civil society organizations, social justice organizations, and media organizations, because I think they depend on each other in many respects. So you know, this is, I think we're at a critical juncture. If our media collapses, our democracy, our ability to hold politicians, business and others to account will suffer drastically, and that is cause for concern.
Mark, it's not useful to lay blame, but if you look at both sides of this equation, a lot of work needs to be done. As far as civil society is concerned, you talk about the danger of an apolitical and ahistorical view of the media taking root. On the flip side, though, the media, that's us, have an incomplete and shallow view of what makes news.
Well, yeah, and I did say that I want to provoke, and I'm provoking you, Jeremy, but what I say is that the media often tends to treat news as what comes from politicians, government leaders, businesses, etc. But there's a whole nother side of what is going on in our society and what we call civil society. I mean, there are literally tens of thousands of NGOs, community-based organizations working in the country. And these are the places where news often originates from. It's organizations like the organizations I used to work for, the Section 27, the Treatment Action Campaign, Right to Know, other organizations that help alert us, society, through the media, to things like the HIV crisis, to aspects of the crisis in the healthcare system, the toilets crisis in relation to basic education, and so on and so on. So I'm saying that media should be paying more consistent attention to civil society, and that in the way that we train journalists and the way that we cover news, there also needs to be more thought around these particular issues. Because I think, Jeremy, that the job of the media is to give a complete view of society, not to give a partial view of what is happening in our country.
I couldn't agree with you more, but you've now crossed the great divide, Mark Heywood, so to speak, from activism and civil society into the media. I would come back at you and say that often we are hampered by capacity, skills, lack of people, lack of money. You would be experiencing that yourself as you work for a website that faces those same problems. This is not going to be solved overnight, is it?
No, it's not, and that's why, and I would agree with you. You say you come back at me, but I'm in total agreement with you, and this is one of the things that I'm saying, which is that just as much as I say the media has to focus better on civil society has to understand the importance of the media, and I think we should be your allies, not your allies because we want favorable coverage all of the time, your allies because we want truth, because we want informed opinion, because we want accountability. So if there is a crisis in the media, Jeremy, and you should say whether you think there is or whether there isn't, that's not just a problem for the media, it's a problem for all of society. And so if there is a problem of capacity, if there's a problem of resources, then I think civil society should be banging on the doors of big business, of the private sector, of people whose advertising revenue is drying up, and saying this cannot be allowed to happen. The consequences for all of us are are too dreadful to contemplate.
Well, I sincerely hope that we have provoked some critical thinking in that respect. From Maverick Citizen, Mark Heywood, thank you very much indeed.